Hello and welcome. My name is Ellen Estelle, and today I'm going to be showing you how to sew Simplicity's S9703. This is a misses dress pattern with a flounce along the neckline, a squared shoulder. This dress calls for challis, charmeuse, cotton lawn, cotton blends, crepe de chine, double georgette, gauze, poplin, or silk types. I sewed this dress for New Year's Eve. I found this fabric while I was shopping in the New York City Garment District at a store. And I found this bolt of fabric that has Millennium 2000 written all over it, which I know it's not the year 2000, but I thought this was an appropriate fabric seeing as we are in the correct millennium. This dress has a bust seam right here, a bust dart on the front, and then this large waistband right here. The skirt is full gathered. There are invisible pockets along the side seam. This dress has a little bit of a sweetheart with a squared off shoulder, and then it has a flounce which goes all the way around to the back. There's a center back invisible zipper. In this tutorial, I end up sewing my ruffle into my zipper so that it's not flying away, but in the original pattern, it does call for the ruffles to be loose. I will note that the bust seams here do not fit a larger bust. I am a double D, and this seam runs right across my bust line instead of under. There are no different sizes for different bust sizes. The bodice has a lining. The skirt pattern does not come with a lining. It can be fully lined though. What I really love about this pattern is the details in it. So this flounce is super, super cute. As you can see, without the flounce, it is a strapless dress. The bust curve line here is super pretty and very flattering. In the fabric that I chose, you can't see some of these details very well, but I do really like the details of this pattern. Keep watching to learn more.
First, I start by cutting out the pattern pieces. Notice how the skirt is cut sideways. This is because a lot of the pattern pieces are cut with the grain line going the opposite direction to what you usually do. For this reason, this dress pattern would be best suited for fabrics that have no print or lines, or one with a tossed print like this, where the direction of the pattern doesn't matter. Make sure to cut out your lining and your interfacing as well. To start with the bodice, press the interfacing pieces along the front and back neckline onto the wrong side of the fabric. Next, sew the front bodice darts from the large circle to the bottom edge of the fabric at 3/8 of an inch. I chose to serge the raw edges of the dart. Press and repeat for the other side. Now take your front and back bodice pieces and match them up along the shoulder seam with right sides together. Sew this seam at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges. Your bodice should then look like this. Then, take your waistband piece and match up the front bodice pieces along the curve, and match up the center front dot. Sew your bodice to the waistband at 5/8 of an inch from the side seam to the large dot. Sew to but not through the dot. Repeat for the other side. Finish the raw edges. Then, with right sides together, sew the side seams of your bodice together at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges. Repeat these same steps for the lining. Now take ruffle pieces number 6 and number 7 and match them up along the side seam with right sides together. Sew at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges. Repeat for the other side. Then, finish the hem of the ruffle along the longest edge. I chose to use the band roll method like I'm showing here. By using band roll, I can sew along the bottom edge and roll the edge under. This is especially helpful for such a strong curve like this one. In order to make your own band roll hemmer, you can buy band roll, which is a stabilizer used for waistbands. Sew a double folded bias binding along the top edge to prevent fraying and help sew a straighter line. Then, pull as many strands of the band roll out as you would like in order to create the width of the hem that you would like. It's super easy to sew and super easy to pull out. Now we're going to attach the ruffle to the top of the bodice matching up any notches and circles. Sew the ruffle down at 5/8 of an inch. Once you've sewn the ruffles to the bodice on both sides, I clip notches along the neckline in order to let the neckline lay more flat. Once you've sewn the bodice lining together, you're going to attach the lining to the bodice with right sides together. Sew at 5/8 of an inch along the neckline and finish the raw edges. You can understitch the neckline to help you get an even more crisp neckline. Pressing will be your friend. Then, in order to sew the armholes, you're going to reach into the bodice and pin the lining to the bodice armhole with right sides together like this. The instructions talk about understitching the armhole as much as you can. It is tricky to understitch along the top of the armhole, so I chose to sew the lining and fashion fabrics together at the top edge. The stitching will be hidden by the ruffle. Now onto the skirt. We're going to start by sewing the pockets to the front and back skirt pieces. The pocket pieces call for 2 lining and 2 fashion fabric pieces cut out, but I chose to cut out all of my pockets in my fashion fabric because my fabric was thin enough. With right sides together, match up the notches and dots and sew your pockets to the side seam at 5/8 of an inch. I chose to serge along this seam as well. Then I chose to do edge stitching along the edge of my lining so that it will lay nice and flat. Now match up your front and back skirt pieces with right sides together. Pin along the outside edges of the lining and the side seams. You're going to sew around the pocket and back down the side seam. In order to enclose your invisible pocket, sew down from the top about 2 inches and up from the bottom about 2 inches, just enough to make sure that your hand can fit inside the pocket opening. Then you're going to sew a row or 2 of basting stitches, or the longest stitch length possible, along the top edge of the skirt. When sewing, press your pocket bags towards the center. Then, pull on the basting threads and gather your skirt. Now with right sides together, sew your skirt to your bodice along the waist seam at 5/8 of an inch. Make sure to match up the side seam and notches. Do not sew the lining down. Now in order to fully enclose your bodice lining, you're going to grab the bottom edge of your lining and the raw edge of your waist seam and pin them together while rolling your skirt in between. That way you can match up the right side of your bodice lining to the wrong side of your skirt. Sew this seam at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges. After finishing this seam, you can pull your skirt out from in between and flip your dress right side out like this. Now we're going to sew the center back seam. With right sides together, match up the edges and pin from the large dot to the bottom edge of your skirt. Sew this seam at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges of your seam individually if you choose, because then you're going to insert your invisible zipper to the top of the seam line. Here I am finishing the raw edges before I sew in my invisible zipper. Notice how I am including the ruffle into my seam. If you don't want to do this, you can finish the raw edge of your ruffle separately. Then all you need to do is sew in your zipper and finish the hem of your skirt. Simplicity S9703 is a classic silhouette with fun details around the neckline. I'm looking forward to sewing this dress again. I chose to add some rhinestones to my dress for the festive occasion. Please like and subscribe. Until next time.